Wow, welcome to Academy of Tone 142. Today is the magic question: which amp is better to get, the JCM 800 tone, the AMP1 Mercury Edition or the AMP1 Iridium Edition? Well, if we go back for that tone, we have to get, of course, a reference, which we have behind me, a good JCM 800, which belongs to Euge VALOVIRTA, the so-called bad boy in the house. The second 800, which is a more mild version of an 800, is my Thomas Marshall, which is a black flag Plexi from, I think, 68 or 67 with a JCM 800 mod. I did that amp for myself to have the perfect 800 sound with a Stratocaster, okay? But I guess most of you guys that are into hair metal and classic hard rock play humbuckers, like this beautiful ESP or my whatever Les Paul classic humbuckers. One sec here, let's get rid of the backing track so we have no extra noise in the house. In the intro, I was starting with the Iridium edition, and I can show you the sounds that I've done with this, which is the clean sound. Sorry, clean sound. You know, simple, clean, nothing special. I was in the in-between position, which is kind of a Strat type sound. And then I moved on to the classic channel and the humbucker, which again. Yeah, this is the Iridium edition with the reverb and no magic at all, which is using the classic channel here. I have the gain on like 9 or 8, somewhere the bass in the middle, and the treble a little bit down, like to 4. And the custom control for classic is, let me check it, clean tone, classic tone is in the middle. Yeah, so I had this kind of, yeah, more slightly scooped sound. You know? If I bring this back to the middle position, classic tone, we have more focused mids. So that's kind of a mild version of an 800, and this is kind of, now I go all the way up, this is kind of a scooped version. Yeah, that's the difference here. Okay, but maybe let's start with the real deal, the original 800 with no effects. So first I give you my Thomas Marshall, which is kind of nice, a little bit vintage, not as much gain as the Iridium, but on the chassis of a real Plexi, it has so much woodiness. Listen to it. Just a very, very honest, straightforward tone. If I want to get something like that, I would use rather the Mercury edition, because that has been an inspiration for that channel as well. Let me switch to low gain mode. So, as we can see, blinking on the Mercury indicates low gain mode. The Thomas Marshall and the Mercury, same volume. Okay, I have more bass and less mids. This Thomas is now a little bit more scooped, because when we go for the 800 from Euge VALOVIRTA, the bad boy, that's a lot more scooped. That's the Mercury. I just bring down the middle. Marshall. And the Mercury edition. I could get closer, but you can see that this character is kind of already there. When I switch to the Classic, which again is more 800 in the Euge style, I would say, you can hear that this gets bigger. But we will check this when I switch for the real deal 800, which is the bad boy, the best 800 in the house. Oh, switch it on. Let me get back to the Mercury on the Classic channel. Versus the bad boy. Mercury. Okay, the bad boy is a little bit more bad, but that's just the Mercury edition, which I think has more of that Thomas Marshall quality, which I wanted. Go back to 3, which is my Thomas. Okay, I have too much gain, but anyway, let's check. I have all the nice features of the AMP1 reverb and boost and so on. But, that's a little bit more woodiness which I like as the approach to an 800 that is, you know, more the classic rock, not the modded high gain sound. So this is where this comes from. And of course, I can get this more scoop, more saturated, more gain. Remember, I was in low gain mode to be closer to these originals. If you want more gain, easy peasy, we just get switch off the amp, press and hold the boost button. Now it's no blinking, which means this is already. Well, this is channel gain on 8, and then I have the extra boost. Yeah, anyway, so this is the beauty of the Mercury. Let me switch to the Iridium. Classic channel tone is counterclockwise, and we are pretty close. Let me compare classic on this to classic on that. No boost, no reverb, and whatever. Let's match the volume. So this is Iridium. This is Mercury. So I ended up on Iridium actually pretty close, okay? So there is kind of a zone where both amps meet each other. And this is very 800, as you can see, classic channel here. And before we compared to the real bad boy 800 and you would recognize the 800 tone mostly in that channel. So this is where both amps kind of overlap. But there's a slight little difference always in the Iridium. The Iridium is tighter. Let me show you this. That's the Mercury. That's the Iridium. Iridium has more chuck, chuck, chuck. Mercury. See, the bass turns a touch fluffy, but that is actually something we find on the Bad Boy as well. That is the Bad Boy. Okay, you see? Bad Boy. Mercury and Iridium. So what I have done is I already put the extra tightness factor that people usually get from their beloved tube screamers, and you know, there's spark booster to tighten up. There's like Zakk Wylde has its own pedal that makes it tighter, the good old Tube Screamer. Horizon, which is more for the metal guys because it's more dramatic. Euge's favorite, the SD1, or here the OD1, which are all these old pedals. I can show you some of this behavior later. This is all being done to get a more controlled gain. Gain without having any muddiness, but still keeping a nice tone. And these pedals are classics. So I kind of thought, what are these pedals doing? And I wasn't trying to have it all the way, because sometimes you like the color of the pedals and want that amp natural. So I kind of just took the idea of the 800 and made it a touch more tighter, inspired by these pedals, okay? So that's the foundation. Now, what is better for you? That depends if you are more coming from the traditional bluesy roots, or if you are maybe coming more from the metal roots. I mean, there's hair metal, or is it hard rock? I mean, what is this kind of music also kind of overlaps. And for me, it's hard to define maybe even the players sound similar, but they grew up with a different background, they come from a different school. So, and thereby, that is actually where these two AMP1s go in different directions. This is definitely coming from more the blues school, which is not that you can't play a blues on an Iridium. We have beautiful videos of people doing that, showing that Iridium is much more than a metal amp. But since you brought up the question, which of these amps is closer to an 800? Well, they're both close, but this has the background of the extra tightness that most people are striving for their whole entire life, to get the tone under control for faster playing, for the more modern cut-through guitars. They are, you know, they have less wooliness. They have, it's hard to describe, but they have this, for me, this a little bit more harder approach versus the traditional, a little bit bloomier, a little bit looser, but a tone that you have a different grip with both tones. So let me play a few more notes so maybe you hear a difference. I, of course, adjust to the amps, but maybe you can hear that I sound slightly different on this one or this one. Here, the Iridium is kind of more in your face always, while this one comes from more the bottom. And similar riff on Iridium. So with this tightness, I can afford to have more gain, even the boost, even the gain all the way up. And that makes this kind of the... Yeah. Oh, I have the metal gate on, but who cares? And yeah, nice. Let's listen to the vintage channel on this one, because vintage in boost also goes in this direction, and I like it a lot because it's slightly more organic for my personal background. So it's kind of another option in this whole territory. Yeah, the vintage has, well, a vintage quality which is a slightly more dynamic curve, which means there's more colors in between clean and overdrive. And that's, yeah, that's the curve. And it has also this kind of zagging element that you might heard from Van Halen. To me, this gives a little bit more, I would call it chaos, that can be controlled by the player. So that's the beauty of the vintage on the Iridium. Okay, let's compare the vintage to the classic again. Okay, a little bit unfair, I need more volume, which is here. Vintage. I'm just half on the volume here, so the sounds kind of in between where I'm in the curve where it starts to overdrive, between clean and overdrive. So you can hear the point of breakup better, and versus classic. See, there's more clean range, and then suddenly it kicks in with this kind of kick down overdrive. Vintage. It's a subtle difference, but it makes you feel differently and thereby play differently. That is why there is a vintage channel and a classic channel on the Iridium edition, and the same for the Mercury, okay? I hope this is not confusing too much, but I try to shed some light from different, well, sides and angles. Well, these days we also do have a bunch of nice pedals that can do it with the clean channel. I simply use them instead of the overdrive channels, so we have a fair comparison of modern. This one is the new Soldano SLO pedal, and it sounds really good. Let's listen to the clean sound. So. So we are on the Mercury as a proof. So, and hey, okay, a little bit of noise, but it sounds very, very authentic. I had the original, a good one, 80s SLO 100 in Academy of Tone. Let me see, I put 28. Yeah, a very old episode. But in this episode, I had, I think, a Bogner Ecstasy and an SLO 100, the real deal from the 80s, kind of the best Soldanos ever made. And this has kind of that tone. I'm getting into this territory with our modern channel. Maybe not exactly. If you watch back on episode 28, you will see what I have done back in the days with the Mercury and the original tube amp. And now we have a new one comparison. So this is, okay, modern channel here, Soldano first. Mercury. Yeah, it has that fluffy low end. It's a little bit noisy, but it has, this is the organic low end. I call this the organic low end. There is a deep switch. Engage the pedal. To give you a little bit extra low end, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the organic low end of a Soldano, which is not as tight like the Friedman when the tight control is engaged. So, but it has all that creaminess in the mid-range, what we know from Soldano. Okay, let's do the AB thing again. SLO pedal. That is the AMP1 modern channel. Counterclockwise. Yes, I just double checked because that's important. Soldano is mids and this is counterclockwise. And just you know that I try to have the maximum. Well, this is, as you can see, this is Mercury mids in the middle, treble a little bit up to whatever 5.5, and bass a little bit up, but this is kind of in the middle, you know. So if we compare this to the pedal, so I think these are the best settings for what I had in mind now. Let's switch back to the Mercury modern channel. In my opinion, very close. I prefer my amp, but hey, it's that close. My reference was the original tube amp, theirs as well. Yeah, it's a great pedal. I mean, to get a Soldano in a pedal was something everybody was looking for ages, and now it's there, and it's doing it. Yeah, and this will work with any amp. Of course, with the AMP1, but in my opinion, it's not really needed because my modern channel is that close. Unless you have the modern channel with the tone setting somewhere else and use the Soldano with a dedicated different tone, which makes a lot of sense if you want a sound in between this one and give you an extra channel. This is the beauty of these new preamp pedals or amp pedals, amp in a box pedals. They can get you really in the territory of the old tube amps without carrying around the 25 kilograms or 20 kilograms with any amp. And yeah, that's an option if you need more channels on the AMP1, any of these AMP1s. And the tone controls are very, very good in the way they are designed because they never lose the character of the Soldano and give you the right frequencies. They have a very good spectrum. I checked it out. I wouldn't change anything on that pedal. So nice job, Mr. Soldano or whoever did that. Just to compare this pedal to the BEOD, you might be interested because these are the modern high gain monsters as pedals. There is your kind of nice fat mids that talk. This is the Friedman. Yeah, there's all your tightness because there is the tight control. Yeah, the Friedman pedal, and you can see that I'm excited as well, because that's a Friedman tone in a pedal, and brilliant. Again, I'm getting very close with this, and even more close with the Iridium. So that's something we can compare. I show you first the classic tone here. I need to tweak the tone a little bit to get in this territory, but okay, I'm on. Oh, okay, I'm on this already. So the noise comes from the power supply. Sorry, that's not fair. Okay, let's. This is the American zizzle that I can hear, and that's on my classic tone control. I show you that one. Here is the zizzle control tone, a little bit up. And that's all the way up, which is too much, but I bring it up just a notch and then. Yeah, but you need the boost to get close to this amount of gain. Inside the Friedman pedal there is a trim port to adjust the gain. I have it on high gain because I like that pedal to do it high gain, and therefore I need my boost to come close. Yeah, that pedal sounds killer too. But this channel sounds killer too. A little bit less. Let me go back a little bit with the sizzle and then. Hey, killer sound, classic boost, humbucker, touch of that side controls, all I fucking need to be in this world. There's another pedal, the 87 by guitar slinger Alex Beirut. Hey, I'm using his guitar as well. Look at this beautiful guitar. And this one is a special, let's call it Sykes sound. great, again, great high gain pedal. Yeah, I can have something which is not as tight, but this kind of modern. My modern channel versus this. Okay, I'm too loud. This has a little bit more mid-range, but hey, all these pedals are great pedals. The amp does what it does. The amp is probably closer to the tube amps, and the pedals get that tone and feel with any amp, the AMP1 or whatever you have. Okie doke, so these were high gain pedals in front of the clean channel. I've done many episodes on how to get the sounds tighter, but let's do it again and use these babies over here. I'm wondering if I get them all in one signal path. I'm on the wherever I am. Sorry. Okay. I'm on the Mercury for now. Okay, clean tone in between position with this guitar. Let's go back for the classic school vintage channel, or let's have the classic channel. No boost, no pedal. Okay, I'm just adjusting to my ears. Let me get a good starting point. Let's put the tone. Okay, I'll keep it a touch up, just a notch here. So, classic channel, a touch of that tone open, bass on 6, middle on 5, and treble on 7. Okay, gain on 8. So let's see how we can boost or make the sound tighter. First with a spark boost. Okay, clean means there is no mid hump, which is kind of flat. And then you can see the problem if you add more gain on such an organic tone, it's getting a little bit muddy. That's the bass, okay? I leave that in the middle, I add level. That's the way too much bass. This is why Friedman has its tight control. If I reduce bass here, I'm getting something like that tight control. Yeah, okay, wrong material, but you can make hair metal with, you know, the classic channel and a spark boost. So now just have more gain and tighten up the low end. Now we can boost the mids. There's a fat switch which boosts lower mids. Let me show you. Neutral, fat, or mid, which is higher. So or mark. No? This has more chest. This has more wah. You know the. And again the mids. This has more aggression, more brutality. Well, fat would be me, the vintage guy. And the mid is higher, is more aggressive. Or I leave it in the middle for just the low cut from the bass controller. That's kind of more original amp, as we can hear the unchanged frequency response. The mid coloration already brings you more into a certain territory. It's a matter of taste. We can compare this to the good old Tube Screamer. Versus the TC. Tube Screamer. There's always this wah. Let me try to get that wah mid-range from the Spark. With a fat switch on, it's more. Yeah, fat, and then there's the boost. Okay, let's see what the SD1 does. Brutality, kind of more than a Tube Screamer. The Tube Screamer is too polite in a way. And see, we have very little drive here. So there's, you know, just a touch of drive and all the rest is gain boost. And the honk effect comes from the kind of EQ curve that the pedal has. Yeah. Now let's put that pedal in front of the Iridium. That makes a lot of sense, and now I know why Euge VALOVIRTA is a fan of SD1 and the Iridium edition, because that's kind of, yeah, I'm a rock star. Okay, just to complete the picture, the OD1 was recommended by Jeff Waters once. Jeff Waters, a Annihilator metal player, you know, the guy that plays so fast. Okay, let's do it. But faster. So let's see what this guy does. Even more. See? This was SD1, now OD1. Back to SD1. So SD1 to me is more rock still, as the OD1 has so much mid-range, which is nice for the metal guys, because the way they use it, it tightens up the low end, and then less gain. Where's the gain? Here. Yeah, another classic. And I bought, you know, all these pedals back in last century when they came out and were cheap. Now they are sought after. Yeah, to finalize the whole thing, here we have a Nobles, which is actually an organic overdrive, but just let's see what this does with this sound. Too organic, okay? So, what did we learn? If you want to tighten up your sound to play faster or more metal, these kind of pedals are classics. Hey, there's the Zach Wild one. Yeah, it's a modded Tube Screamer. They are all in a similar territory. On the other hand, we have those different AMP1s. And for you guys, it's a feel thing, whatever you choose. It's a feel thing. Is it that pedal on that clean channel, or is it that classic channel? There are so many options. It's hard to get the message across on a YouTube live stream. And it's hard to, you know, I just interact with what I feel and what I hear. And that's what these guys are doing with me. How to sum it up, I don't know. In the end, I would highly recommend to play both amps, and you will be able to tell immediately what kind of amp is your choice, because you have the tone in your head, and you have the feel in your hands, and it's either here or it's either there. So, as you could hear, we are very close to the good old originals, and all the pros told me that these amps are great, but my amps are just as great. And the rest is nuances. And then if there's a personal preference in one or the other, I don't care, because I'm a musician myself, and whatever makes me happy is my choice, and it's good for me. Yeah, this was kind of my approach on shedding some light into the JCM 800 discussion. Yeah, now we have a nice, long, intense interview with Marzi Montazeri from Houston, Texas. And Yeah, this guy fell in love with the AMP1 Iridium edition, and if you want to hear his pedalboard and his sounds, you you go to the end of the interview, because we kind of went through the whole story of his interesting personality, coming from Iran into the USA, growing up with Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, but having different roots. But, and being in a melting pot over there changed his life, and he was there at the right time, so he became a killer guitar player. He actually has 4 different signature solar guitar signature models by Ola Englund, who was one of the guys that he saw the AMP1 Iridium demo, and yeah, check out this very interesting interview. If you just want to hear the sounds, they are coming at the end. Yeah, so you have to wait and watch, or fast forward a little bit if you are just into his tone, which is absolutely killer. Yeah, enjoy Marzi. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure and honor to talk to Mazi Montazeri from Houston, Texas. He is one of those guys that have a lot of passion. When I listen to his passionate guitar playing, yeah, I can feel there's a long, long history that leads up to where he is now. And the fun thing is, me and the heavy guys, I'm more this kind of, tone, bluesy, but lately I got so many nice people connected in the heavy scene, and the more I dig in, the deeper and the more nice people I discover, and Mazi is one of them. So Mazi, for me, the first thing is, you are from Texas, you play in bands like Heavy as Texas and Exhorder. For me, Texas, the cliche is ZZ Top, maybe Eric Johnson. But what has Texas to do with heavy? Can you explain?
Well, Thomas, first of all, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, you're right, man. It's and Eric ZZ Top being from my hometown of Houston. That's the people. Worldwide known band. And also, yeah, Eric Johnson. And then you also have Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then and from Houston, actually, you have a band called Dead Horse, who was like pretty big and underground a lot. They took off, but then they disbanded. They had 2 albums that were pretty revolutionary, stand up to this, still to this day, way ahead of their time in the way they wrote. And so I encourage you to check it out. It's called Dead Horse out of
Okay.
Houston. And Houston is like a melting pot, of sorts. And I was in the studio after I was in Superjoint Ritual, and was working on an album called The Need, and everything had lyrics. All the songs had lyrics. They had titles. It was one of those cliche moments in the studio where I was literally sitting down with that one song and I didn't have anything. I had like a yeah, all right, and that was it.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was like the intro, and then so I had a rhythmic pattern and I was going down with it. And all of a sudden, I wrote down, when you're low and you need it slow, just you remember, we as heavy as Texas. And it stuck with me, and the name of the band actually was called after me. It was just called Marzi at the time. And then I didn't want a band named after me, kind of thought it was weird. I kind of always wanted to associate myself with a band, a unit, 25% of like a whole thing. And then so I, moved towards naming the band Heavy as Texas, which is a pretty big state, man.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is, when we talked the other day, on a phone call before, we do that, we had a little contact via email and stuff like that. So there's some kind of background. What I found very interesting that you kind of have an immigrant background coming from Iran with your
Right.
with your parents when in the 70s, or when was this?
Right. At 1979, right when the country was taken hostage by their current regime, to this day, my parents fled the country, kind of escaped, and came to. My dad had come to America in 1976, and he had best friends here that he had gone to school with. So he kind of like scouted it, and then when things got really bad, he moved our whole family out here to Houston, Texas. And for me, the climate of the city that I was raised in, not born in, but raised in Iran, the climate, it was like you go to America, yeah, and we come to Houston. Nothing against Houston, but the climate was exactly the same. The only thing that was different was, obviously cultural differences, but the weather was like exactly the same. So, and cultural differences, and I didn't speak a lick of the language. I was passionate about music, and then immediately Houston radio stations and rock radio station and pop radio stations, and the Grease movie soundtrack had come out. Those songs, the Bee Gees were like really really big, and then fast forward, I heard Van Halen.
Hmm. Of course. And that changed your life.
Man, my life literally changed. I had no. It was a sonic movement. It was like not even somebody playing guitar. It didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before. It was like a sonic movement. Now, being older, and I have always appreciated Eddie Van Halen in so many ways. I always tell people, he's just not a guitar player. And as a guitar player, he wasn't some lead guitar player. He
Oh,
wasn't a. He was like a whole package. His rhythms, the rhythm playing, created all that other stuff. It was just his phrasing, everything about him. It seems like now, again, the older I get, the more I learn. It seems like they knew all the rules, and they did all the rules that it took to write songs, and they broke every rule there was within the context of creating songs. Everything made sense. Everything had a beginning and an ending, but they made things so dynamic and so exciting. And yeah, just barely speaking English, I went and got to see Van Halen during the Women and Children First tour.
oh yeah. Hmm.
I saw them live. I
Wow.
saw them live before I had played my first show, my first talent show in America. Before that, I had actually seen Van Halen live, and I can never explain something like that to someone. If you've never seen that, there's bands that put on great theatrics, they have great light shows, they have great pyro, they have, there's bands, there's people like, Pink Floyd and Roger Waters who have just like exceed theatrics to bring about their art. But as far as raw power, like pure raw power, I mean, I love AC/DC and what they had, but I had never in my lifetime had witnessed anything like Van Halen. And I'm talking about their infamous, from the beginning intro, where the lights would go out, but it would be the silhouette going on. You couldn't tell what was going on, and all the lights, they were on stage making noise, But then all the lights would go on Eddie, and he would play a riff and like Unchained, and when the beat would kick in, they would hit up all these white lights on this. It would look like a city lit up, and David Lee Roth would be in the middle of it with these insane split that he would do, and it was like a jolt of energy. It's unexplainable. Okay, it's unexplainable. But I want to tell you that not only the very first time on Women and Children First, but two nights and Fair Warning, two nights on Diver Down, and three nights in a row in on 1984, I saw Van Halen.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
Houston was a place at the time where, excuse me, the first band that did this was ZZ Top. They had played three nights in Houston. Like they had like announced one show on the radio, And I remember keep listening to the radio announcing, you know, second show and then the third show. So it wasn't like pre-planned. They were selling out. And then Journey was another band that played here 2 times in a row. On MTV, they have a concert of Journey where Steve Perry wears a tiger type shirt. And that's actually shot here in Houston. And then Van Halen was another band that would play that would do more than 2 nights. You know, they played 1984. They played here 3 nights, and I went to all 3 shows. And that was the last time. Well, till you know when they got Wolfie and they got Roth back, I got to see that last concert. The
Wow.
last time they were here. Yeah.
I mean, just the names you drop in. I mean, ZZ Top, Journey, Van Halen, the cream of the rock music. It doesn't get any better, and you probably have seen them in top shape, in top form.
Yeah, in all truth, and I had only seen ZZ Top after way after I was way older, and I've never seen Journey. But as far as them, you know, when it comes to being heavy, you know, like you know, he is so heavy, you know, under pressure. Those riffs are so heavy, and his guitar tone is unexplainable. It's so heavy and it's so it's like nasty. And so I think being raised here, like you automatically just going to music stores and having this like older dudes that are like really blues based.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? ZZ Top's like heavy metal to them. Like watching these guys play, I think it kind of seeped into me, like involuntarily. It's just like it's kind of like being in an environment, like it's like kind of like you know drinking water or like you know it's just like
Pick it up
it's
by
just
nature. Yeah.
like Stevie Ray Vaughan said. It's like something in the air out here that kind of like gets into you. And I have friends out here that play, and they're kind of unlike other people because we have this blues-based type. Inheritance, you know, and then we take it furthermore. For me, it was almost kind of like, you know, I love neoclassical music and I love those kind of runs and stuff like that, but it was just kind of almost like cultural. It's like I wasn't like raised around that, you know, so I gravitated towards the things I was raised. I guess again, it's kind of like almost regional, you know, being where you were born. I guess if I was in Chicago, I'd be a different type of style of blues guy, you know. I really, 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 really like Texas blues. And I got to tell you, you know, as much as I saw Van Halen, I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan 8 times in a row. No, I'm sorry, three New Year's Eve shows in a row. I saw Stevie Ray 8 times in a row. And Eric Johnson, I saw well over 50 to 60 times prior to him putting tones out. He was just
that early. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Guitar Player magazine was such an important part of my life because it didn't matter if it had Earl Klugh on the cover or Tommy Tedesco, or it didn't matter who was on the cover or like Angus Young. There was so much to learn, and you always kind of like almost connected with everybody, and like yeah, you know, almost in a weird way you connected to what they were saying and how they felt about music. And Billy Gibbons had mentioned a guy named Eric Johnson from Austin, Texas. I automatically
Checked
thought
him out.
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
So with the Austin name. And then a little bit later in another article when Night Ranger was a big hit, great guitar playing, great guitar players and great people, Jeff Watson and Brad Gillis. Jeff Watson had also, when asked about, you know, who excites you, he mentioned Eric Johnson. So now, twice in publication, I've read the same name. Obviously, being a kid, about 16 years old and not knowing anything, I assumed Eric Johnson. I'm sorry, I'm Stevie Ray Vaughan. I assumed that.
Because of, yeah, it comes from that
Because like my guitar vocabulary at this time is Eddie Van Halen is God, and then Randy Rhoads is the son of God, and then Jeff Beck is like their God, and then Jimmy Page writes the and Blackmore are like kings of metal to me, and like I mean everybody was like important to me in my life, and then. And man, I get so excited talking about guitar players, man. I lose track. But there was a show in Houston, and it was kind of like a convention of music stores and record stores and whatnot. And this guy Eric Johnson was going to play 11 o'clock at night. So I remember this, Thomas, like it was yesterday. There wasn't that many people, so I went up front and stood in front of like this semi-empty place, maybe 50 to 60, because it was scattered. I remember this guy walking on stage with like kind of like punk rock kind of haircut, like it was frizzy on top, and he had a spiked up kind of like,
yeah.
And he had this Jimi Hendrix marching band jacket on, and he had a Stratocaster on. He walked up to the front of the stage. I'm used to seeing big rock shows and this and that and that. So I mean to tell you, what happened next is something that changed my life, because I did not expect at all what I was about to see. So what Eric Johnson did is like, I've never heard this before now. I need, and with the internet and stuff like that, I need people to just use their imagination. That I'm a virgin guitar player that listens to records and visually have only seen really bad dudes like in music stores, which I was lucky enough to be around really killer players. But then this guy gets on stage, and the first thing he played, Thomas, was the lead solo that is Cliffs of Dover.
Cliffs of Dover,
so that's the first thing he plays is Cliffs of Dover. But he just stands there and he plays this thing. And he proceeded to play, my memory brings back, he played Zap that night. He played Manhattan that night. He played all the clean guitar stuff with the chimes and stuff like that. He did all this stuff that night. When I went back to school the next day, I didn't know who I was, man. I was like, I really had to rethink my life, because I had seen someone for the first time really play the guitar. I knew that everything that I was doing up to that point was just like, just a big kind of like, let's see what happens. This guy was like, let me tell you what happens, and it inspired me to no end. And 3 years later, I got to ask to open up for him at an Amnesty International concert here at Fitzgerald in Houston, Texas. And I had to sit down by myself and like create a piece of music and stuff and play for like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And opening up for Eric Johnson. So that was like a most nerve-wracking moment of my life. But I made some things together. I put some things together, and when I walked off stage, Eric had he held the curtain open for me, and then he gave me a compliment, man. He said nice chops, and when he opened up a conversation with me, when he said nice chops, I flipped out. I said, oh my God. So I told him the whole story about what I just said about, thinking that he was Stevie Ray Vaughan and seeing him live that night and what he meant to me and what he had done. And the more I was telling him this, Thomas, he was like kind of putting his head down. He was like a really somber individual, and I really couldn't even take it, man. I couldn't take that he played guitar so well, and he was such a beautiful human
humble guy, unbelievable. Yeah. I met him too. And now, from my German perspective, I'm a little bit, you had the chance to listen to all these great bands. And what I found out, especially in the US, a couple of years ago, the radio, the rock stations were really good.
So good.
I remember my first trips to the US. They were when you put on the radio stations and you drive those long drives you have to do from one city to the other. hours, and then it's so much fun because they have that raw energy rock. They played The Who, they played Van Halen, they played all that stuff. We talked about this earlier. Today, everything is kind of more corporate, and it was in Europe way before in the US, where we had this kind of blah blah pop thing. Maybe the US is still a little bit better, but this was my biggest impression about coming to the US in the like 20, 30 years ago when I did my first trips. I was impressed about that fun that was on the radio, and you know, guys like Van Halen, bands, as you said, with the riff quality, you know, it's raw energy, you know. My A string. Yeah. So, but
there
you
you go.
know,
There's some raw energy right there.
raw energy. So I'm very, very impressed of the cultural mix you get in Texas or in the US. I had to have a bit more sneaking behind. I had a guy working in the record store that had all the hot records that gave me the entrance to Stevie Ray Vaughan or Eric Johnson. And the funny thing is, when I first came to a NAMM show, some people thought I was Eric Johnson. I kind of looked a little similar with my haircut back in those days. And
Right.
I played a Strat, and I played instrumental music, and I played some expensive chords. And they thought, this guy must be Eric Johnson. I said, no, I'm Thomas from Germany. But I have to admit, Eric Johnson is 100 times better than what I do. I just did my thing and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, Eric Johnson, sweet, killer player, sweet guy. I'm totally his fan, still up to until today.
I am too. I'm thankful that on this journey that I like happen to you be such an organic thing. Like even for myself, if I look back at my life, you know, when you're a kid, you're not dictating anything, and to see all the events that happen, and the way I gravitated towards this instrument, and how I did it naturally. It wasn't like I saw somebody that played guitar. It's just something that I always wanted to do. And being the most unnatural person at it, not having a clue to how to tune the guitar, you know, having that first acoustic guitar that I bought were like $35. I didn't know what to do, so I really tightened it up, the tuning pegs as tight as it could, and the nut was coming up, and then you could see the glue that was actually holding the bridge. The bridge was coming up on this thing, till a friend of my dad's came over one time, and he tuned it, and he played like a Kinks song, and he was using bar chords, and when I saw his fingers organized like that, moving about, playing bar chords, and I man, I didn't know what to think. But I'm saying it's, you know, the thing was such an organic upbringing with this thing, and then you hear Van Halen, you get the electric guitar, and then it's like the first guitar you get, it's like, man, you know, you plug it into an amp, and the best way I can explain it is like it sounds like a fart. It doesn't sound like Van Halen 1, far from it. But and I've always gone and said that I am a self-taught player, which is in a sense correct. But I will tell you this, since you brought this very, very, very strong point up, Houston rock radio, it was my teacher. Like that was, and it's supremely exciting time in my life where I was just a sponge, and you name it, the Beatles, you know, Rolling Stones, man, Deep Purple, Queen, Pink Floyd, Van Halen, Cheap Trick, the Doobie Brothers, Police, Heart, you know, and then local stuff, Christopher Cross, what an amazing songwriter, guitar player. And then ZZ Top, and there was another band called Point Blank, had like a really groovy song from out here. This is all Houston based. so much stuff, man. And then, you know, when it got to be heavier, for me, it was definitely Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne. And when Metallica first came out, Iron Maiden, how could I forget? Um, Steve Harris, oh my God. And Dave Murray, as far as like guitar players, when I heard, what was it, Phantom of the Opera, you know, and it's just like when I heard. And then his tone, that creamy tone, and he would do the trills, man. I fell in love with him. And it wasn't, I didn't like Metallica's first effort because I think the first thing anybody played for me was like Kirk Hammett's guitar solo into like Am I Evil? And it was like, I was at the age where I heard production and I was thinking better production and better guitar playing. I didn't get this at all. I was like, I remember telling the guy, I was like, dude, have you ever heard Eddie Van Halen? Like, have you heard Eruption before? It's like, what is this garbage, you know? And then it's a good point that I'm going to bring this up because my friend Scott Mellick, he just passed away like three, 4 nights ago due to health complications. I got a message, like I got up for some reason at 3 a.m. Then I went back to sleep, and then when I got up again, I had a message that Scott had gone to ICU, but he didn't make it. Scott had turned me on to Thin Lizzy's song called Thunder and Lightning, and I had never heard anything like that before. Never. John Saxon, like that song is like punk rock, heavy metal. It's just like that is like, I love that song so much. And then at the same time, he goes, "Have you like Metallica?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Have you heard this?" And he put on Ride the Lightning. I was like, "Oh,
Wait a minute.
okay, wait a
Exactly.
minute, wait a minute." So I really took it. Ride the Lightning made me like make a turn towards heavier music. And by the time Master of Puppets came out, I was full-fledged heavy metal dude.
Masterpiece.
I wasn't into like like the first wave or like caught on to like playing super heavy stuff because again, you guys understand like Van Halen, that rhythmic style. My contemplation in my brain was like, what's my band gonna sound like, Van Halen or Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath? That was always like a dilemma. And I was like, I didn't know who I was, I was just always gravitating towards things that made me feel.
Hmm.
Minus all this other stuff, man. It's just was a personal relationship that I had, minus the radio. Because if I came home, mind you now, when we moved to America, my mom and brother left. Like fresh off the boat. My
Yeah.
mom took back off and went back to Iran with my little brother, and I was brought up here on the streets. I didn't speak English. I didn't have a dad. I didn't have a mom. My dad wasn't around. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have no relatives.
Mm.
I had no relatives at all. So this is where I must have, before I was born, I must have told God, I really want to play music and I want to play with a lot of feeling. And so he said, all right, I got you. So what happened was, out of nothing, man, my life was whoop, upside
Yeah.
down. Everything
What
that I
age?
knew that
What
was,
age were you when you came?
I was 9 going on 10.
Okay. And I think this is the age where you really absorb that kind of thing, because I remember when I was a 9 or 10-year-old, I was listening to the records of my dad and friends of my dad, and this is the crucial phase from like whatever 9 to 19. Basically, this is the phase when you have access to good music at that age. This is your socialization. This determines what you're going to be for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And I honestly, I thank God for the time period that I was born in,
Yeah.
because of the exposure that I had. Imagine going to a buffet, like every day there's a new dish that tastes so good that you've never tasted before. But here it is. You know, when the anticipation of the artist that you adored or admired, their next release, it wasn't even what is it going to sound like. It was like, what's the album cover going to look like? It was an artistic package of the visuals, and then you would dive into the music. You would put it in. You would put your headphones on. So what I was merely saying about me being by myself, in return, I had a deep relationship with the albums that I had because I spent a lot of alone time with them. So if there's different layers that one must, get to a little bit deeper levels, well, what I'm saying is like I had no distractions. I didn't even have a family. I was gravitated towards something that soothed my pain, but then I opened it up. And now, you mentioned something beautiful, which was like growing up and your father's friends and records. Well, my dad's friend lent me 2112.
No,
And he
okay.
goes, and then he lent me Hotel California. And he goes, you're going to like this song, Hotel California, And I remember only listening to that one song because I was so in love with the guitar playing. But when I put on 2112, even though I didn't speak English very much, I opened up the album and there was text. And it was the first album that I saw that there was lyrics, but then there was text before the lyrics. And it was telling a story. It was my first concept. And so what I'm
Experience
saying,
album.
all this stuff was like new discovery, new discovery, new discovery. And like, I loved Stairway to Heaven. I loved that song, and I didn't know anything else. So I decided to go buy the first Led Zeppelin album. This was something I did consciously. I was like, I'm going to go buy their albums, and just discovered it. I remember my dad was at a friend of his house in Huntsville, Texas, and I asked, I said, sir, may I put this on your turntable? He said, sure. They were somewhere else. I put this thing on, good times, bad times. Communication Breakdown was just so heavy,
Yeah.
so heavy. But when I heard Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, dazed and confused, like, it's like, what's going on? What's going on, man? It's just like, so, like, I can go on, man, forever telling you about like the personal relationship I've had with like Heaven and Hell when it first came out. With Sabotage, with that album, but with like these are albums that have been out, and then again, Houston Rock Radio helped me to know so much, and there was independence.
Yeah.
And it wasn't corporate, so not in this ginormous country, not everybody was listening to the same program. Every region, every city had its own program. In
Yeah.
Houston, we had a radio station called KOOL, which was ginormous, and there was a lady named Linda Silk, and I believe on Saturdays, for an hour, like late at night, she would play local music. So you had, hey man, my band's gonna get on there. You had that chance. But I remember just being a kid and riding with like 10 other people in the backseat of another car. Like one guy's got a license, and we're all driving, and we're listening to it. And this band called Hellstar came on, and we freaked. They were like, from Houston, Texas, Hellstar, and we were like, hey man, it was like they were so good. They're still around, and they're still great. Larry, their guitar player, is one of my greatest friends, and he keeps evolving. He's one of those dudes, he keeps getting better with age, better songwriter, better guitar tone. He's like a sweetheart. He's always been the same. But yeah, but that stuff is so thrilling, it's so exciting. It's so new. It's so unfiltered. And you get to choose, there was just so much. And I loved it all, man. I loved when the 80s came. Obviously I was a hard rock guy, and I was really not into glam metal and stuff like that. But I liked like I think it's Howard Johnson is his name, maybe. I like kind of like Thomas Dolby,
Thomas Dolby.
yeah.
I was the pop guy back in the 90s and 80s. I mean, these are all the guys from the UK, with the weird stuff, slightly weird. but I find it quite interesting that you, with coming from the American side, of course, listening from America to the European guys, mainly British guys. I mean, not only pop, but also the rock guys. You know, Iron Maiden, British John Sykes, and you know, there's so there for me, the Germans, they had always both sides. We listened to the Americans and we listened to the British. You know, so and for me, I had this kind of, wait a minute, there is something kind of roots orientated things in America with the honesty and this kind of fun Van Halen riff energy. But on the other hand, the guys that did it before, coming from the Who, you know, I had my experience also in at this age when I had heard Quadrophenia by the Who, my first concept album. It is a ceremony. You open an LP like that, double, and then you have a booklet, and the pictures tell you the story. You know, even I couldn't speak English at that time. I was a kid, you know, speaking German, no clue of nothing, but I could see the story. I could feel what it was about, you know?
Wow.
And so I connected to this kind of world without having their language. It was just music and images. And I can totally relate to what you're saying, because this was at the age where it really got deep into your soul. And it's still here, you know?
It's still here.
Yeah, it's still here. It's unbelievable. And I'm so glad that I got exposed to this beautiful music. And you know, I had a journey too, like you, with what was my sound? I don't know. I listened to a lot of Deep Purple, but I listened also to pop music, clever pop music, good melodies. I love that, and even weird stuff sometimes. And what to me now, there's something like, maybe you never heard of that band, but there's a UK band called Killing Joke, who did Love Like Blood. I think it was late 80s. And this guy now plays my AMP1, you know, which is like, it comes back in circles. And this, you know, when I was a teenager, I was not even thinking about having a company and designing amps. I was just playing the guitar, and I was, you know, going to a discotheque and dancing to this song because bow, 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 he played some chords. And then, you know, a heavy beat, and this was so deep for me, and it is still there, you know. And now I can see this guy being on tour with something that I created, makes me fucking proud, you know. Or the other thing that I've done is this Rotosphere Leslie emulation thing,
Wow.
being used by Jeff Beck, by Bonamassa, by basically them all. And that's also something I created like 10, 15 years ago. And it's part of something I put my heart into. And now my heroes use it. So I kind of had the chance to give them something. You know, it was never conscious. I didn't plan that, but I just did it for myself and the guys who can appreciate it. So anyway, this is my connection.
That's absolutely beautiful, and it's your full comprehension and paying attention in your upbringing of what was around you and what was great that brought you to the table to then be able to, you know, like your tree finally bear fruit, you know, but it rooted and all those things that you just mentioned, which is just, those are strong roots to have. And for me, having this conversation with you today is wonderful, because as I was talking about my personal story being like almost like an experiment, you know, nobody put me up to it. There was nobody to even point the way. I didn't even know how to tune a guitar. I was only gravitated towards something. I was only gravitated towards something because my heart just went there. And so I did not question it. And it was like a big thing at the time, was like, just do that always. Follow your heart. If it feels right, you got to go do that. If it feels right, there's no questioning in it. Don't question it. Just go about it and do it. It may be hard, it may not be, but just go answer. So I was very perceptive and understood now, where tone was coming from. Yes, I had heard Led Zeppelin, but yes, it came after me. I was born and stuff like that. But yes, I was catching up on stuff, and I was at a point where I could really easily go back and brush up on my history to see the Yardbirds and to see, like, okay, who was the first dude that come with the nasty, dirty sounds? Okay, it was Isaac Hayes and then Jimi Hendrix, and they start slashing their speakers and start doing this and that, and like then Eddie comes, and when the whole thing with Eddie was like, I didn't even get it, I didn't understand it, but it was like he uses different tubes and he runs this thing high. I just remember hearing it and then thinking to myself that he is not just playing that what I hear that sounds perfectly like out of heaven, but he created the guitar. He put the pickup in there, and like it's like a Gibson pickup on a Strat body. It's like all these things morphed into something that just opened up all kinds of like break all the rules kind of thing. Now, mind you, you got to be something in order to be able to give it back, So you got to do the legwork. You have done it. I saw Eddie do it. I just saw it as a big opportunity. It just kind of like opened me up to something like that. So I didn't. My whole story started with tone. I had like a 2-watt amp that sounded like farts, and I went to Texas.
Yeah, what was this, like a radio, or what was the 2 watts? What was it? Was it transistor? Was it tubes? I'm just curious.
Oh no! It was a I want to say it was definitely transistor. I think it might have been a custom.
Ah, okay, yeah, okay.
But it was
So
like
a cheap entry level, whatever, the cheapest thing you could plug a guitar into.
It was a hand-me-down. It was, somebody gave it to me. Like somebody was like, here you go.
Yeah.
So I never plugged into it because I never liked the sound.
Okay.
I liked it.
I played the guitar acoustically all the time because one of the reasons was my father wasn't a big fan of me playing guitar.
Okay.
He did not want me to play guitar, so I couldn't play guitar when he was at home. And if I played, I had to play acoustically. So even then, I had to not be loud, so he couldn't hear the strings. And even then, like I said, nothing happens, like, oh, poor me, because it taught me how to be sensitive, how to play with a light touch and all this stuff. And like all this stuff was just learning. I went to Texas Tom's music store, and I went to the salesman. His name was Randy, and I said, Randy, I want that sound, man. Van Halen, like Tom Schultz, Boston, Brian May. And he immediately, like, he couldn't put it in my face fast enough as I'm talking. And he goes, this is the best overdrive in the market. And he puts in my face a green Tube Screamer. It had just come out that year.
1980 or 1980, what is 3, early 80s?
I got the same one. It's barely green. Mine's not green anymore. It's been kicked around. Next time we see each other, I'll send you a picture, in fact.
Okay.
Well, anyway, I took this thing home, and I plugged it up, and I dreamt of this massive thing happening, and nothing happened. And then I turned the gain on 10. I put everything on 10, and it made that fart kind of just louder. And it was like, man, I tried to get rid of this pedal, Thomas, for like 2-3 years. Nobody would buy it off of me. I bought it for $40, by the way. And I think it was like they were going for 80. I've got it. I think, Randy gave it to me for 40. I still have it in the box.
Okay, I got a box as well, which is
crazy.
which is actually worth the money now.
Wow.
So I bought this, when I was young, when they were cheap, and now people pay crazy money for this thing. And
that's an incredible condition.
yeah, for some reason, I never throw this box away. And I bought a lot of things in my early days, and I never sell. I only had to sell a few things, and I'm lucky. I had a good taste. I sold the stuff that I really don't need. I only regret a few things. So, and all the rest, I keep all what you see here, my collection. I bought when stuff was cheap on the way. I always had an excuse. I was blah, blah, blah. So all this stuff came to me for little money. Not, I'm not this kind of collector that goes out with a big pile of money and wants that original Tube Screamer PCB version A from 1980, whatever, too. I bought it when it was cheap, like you, $40 or something, and it's still there. I'm not the super biggest fan of a Tube Screamer because, like you discover what it's actually doing. In technical term, it's kind of a mid-hump boost that makes sense if you plug this into something else that needs some extra mids pushed. For the blues guys, is that dippy Fender clean channel, that needs something in the middle, Stevie Ray Vaughan style, to cut through and gives you a little extra gain. But if you are in the rock world, you want to have that singing lead tone, or if you're a metal guy, you need that extra tightness to play the fast things. And that's what this thing is great for. And here's another one. This is the OD one, came out at kind of the same time. And this is, I bought this again when it came out, and it's like when you play it in front of a clean amp, I don't even like it. It's, for me, I keep this kind of as a tightening tool for guitar sounds. That's what it's actually good for. So what was the next step after the Tube Screamer? So let's hear that kind of tone journey.
I'm almost my journey is almost kind of identical to yours, but except that your pedals are in way better condition than mine are. But so my journey, actually, you brought the yellow pedal out. Mine was the Rat pedal, the Rat distortion pedal. The Proco Rat pedal had come out, and
you're talking about.
And and this thing all of a sudden was like, man, so I didn't have a high gain amp. I had bought for only $150 a JC120. So that pedal that you're holding in your hand became my sound, man. I colored it. And now, mind you, I unplugged the 212s on a JC120, so I was just using it as a head, running at the back into a 412 Marshall.
No,
I know it sounds funny, but this was my head, So the JC120 was my head, and the distortion came from that pedal, man. So now the Tube Screamer played the role that it was going to play for a good part of my life, because it's also now retired. It became a lead boost for me, and like that was it. And that really it's for like decades. It served that purpose, and then that combination that you're holding right there. So that was the beginning of it, and then I started to get, I had a carving cabinet, by the way. I bought a carving cabinet because that Marshall was borrowed. That was my next big purchase. And after that, I believe that my first big purchase on a head was a Dean Markley head. I bought a Dean Markley head, and I happened to have a Dean Markley little practice amp. Somebody taught me, like, if you put this thing in front of this thing, I forget how you can get more gain out of it.
Of course, yeah.
I did that on the Dean Markley. I did it in a Marshall, and I did it on an Orange. Somewhere along the way, I did something wrong because I fried all those 3 amps. I don't know how I did it, It's like a cliche story. You're at band practice and you smell smoke, and you're like, what's going on, And you're like, so this was all in in search of like that tone that I really didn't know what it was, but it was like, it was definitely more saturation than, you know, people like Jimmy Page and Eric, you know, not Eric Clapton, but like Richie Blackmore were bringing to the table. It was more along the lines of, you know, the riff that really changed my life was when I heard that, and boom, when the beat comes in, and I was like, what happened? So it was basically Tony Iommi's sound a little bit tighter, and that's Randy Rhoads. And that's when Randy Rhoads came along. So then I was messing with Marshalls and that Tube Screamer. And the Tube Screamer and the Marshall stuff became my stuff, but it still didn't cut. It was percussive because I really do like EL34s.
Yeah.
But it always was like something was lacking. Something was lacking. Something was lacking. Then Ingle came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined Phil Anselmo's band. Like I want to try to go back to, okay. So let's go back to like the next thing that really was like, holy shit. And for me, believe it or not, it was a Crate 70-watt combo amp. And I went to the music store where I bought my friend Michael Emerson was the manager there, sold me his Les Paul that I can talk about later. But he was like, man, check this thing out, man. It's got a little 12AX7 in the preamp section. And the rest is all transistor, but listen to it. Listen to that. And it had that, you see, I've always been trying to.
Is it controlled gain? You want a rich, saturated tone that you have a grip when you feel the strings and have that kind of control. So this is the tone kind of you were aiming at?
Yes, that, and also my main objective was to have it where I did not do anything for leads. I wanted the rhythm and lead tone all at the same time. I wanted it to be both percussive, and I wanted just the one thing, and a well-rounded, all-together tone. And this thing had it. And then one day I go there, and so I bought it, and I put it through a Marshall 412. and then one day I went to the music store, and they said, look, they got the preamp. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you mean I can buy a power amp and run a bunch of speakers? They were like, yeah. So for a long time, that Crate, I forget what it's called, white. It was a white preamp, and I bought another one, I think for $60 online. I got a Marshall power amp, 100, the gold power amp.
One, yeah, 3 rack space, heavy but good. Yeah.
Right, and it was like I wasn't never a rack guy, but now all of a sudden I have a rack, and I have this preamp, and I have this power amp, and somebody turned me on to sonic maximizers, and then Behringer had a decent price on theirs, so I added that to the mix, and man, it was like a sonic push that was just like very controlled feedback if I wanted it. Never touched anything for leads, never touched anything for, it was like clean. People back then, actually, people would go, now I change channels. People would go, what do you do for clean? I said, I'll turn my guitar down.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
But now I actually change channels to have the variety of things going on. I know that your mic is not picking up what this mic is picking up here. I do want to kind of get into this, pedal board and AMP1 that I have in front of me. But the Crate was the next thing. And after that, I wanted a head. I kind of just wanted, I wanted a brain now. I've been like old school, man. I've been so without it. So I went to a NAMM show that happened to be in Texas that year. It happened to be in Austin. And I got my first endorsement by a company there, Spectraflex Cables, that I'm still with.
Hey, I love them. I tell you, Spectraflex, Fetzoflex is to me the best sounding cable for a Stratocaster.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, I know the guy. I talked to him at NAMM shows too. He has several versions, but that's the cable I use the most when I record or in the studio. And it's, to me, the best sounding, whatever 6 meters is in foot, that length with a Stratocaster, it's my holy grail cable, sound-wise.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I met Dave in Austin, and he was like a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful person. And I've had my relationship with, like, I guess, endorsements or whatnot. His is Spectraflex, and I go the longest. Well, that same NAMM, I happened to walk into a room, and there was an amp company, and it was just like, you know, I couldn't get it to work. You know, there was so much saturation on it that it didn't really sound good. I actually, like, you know, I was like, somebody was like, I was playing it, and they were kind of like turning knobs for me, and I was like, man, where's the gain at? He's like 8. I was like, put it on 7.
Yeah.
And then I was like, put it on 6. Anyway, I was like, put it on 1. When they put it on 1, it sounded okay. I came home, and it sounded like a souped up Plexi, you know? And when I came home, the owner of the company hit me up and said, man, what did you do to my amp? You had like a bunch of people out there listening and blah, blah, blah. I want to give you an endorsement. I thought that was kind of cool. So I picked up an endorsement with a local company at the time. They were called Diamond Amps.
Mm-hmm.
And the first amp that he gave me, it didn't work. So there was something wrong with it. And I returned it to him to get it fixed.
Fixed, yeah.
And then he says, you know, in the email, he goes, I got you a backup amp. Don't worry. I go over there, and he gives me a Bogner Ubershaw. That's his personal one, as a loaner.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
You like that one?
Man, I'm telling you, when the Ubershaw came, it was like the low string to the high string. Everything was balanced. The gain was exactly what I wanted, and there was no room to touch anything else. It was like, why would I? It's like putting like you know, steak sauce on a perfectly made steak. You don't put ketchup on steak, you know.
It's not needed, yeah.
No, it wasn't needed. And then he invited me back over there, and he gave my amp back to me. And then he invited me back there one day to do an A and B between his amp and the Ubershaw. And I was like, are you sure you want me to do this? Like, do you really want me to be honest here? Because like, you know, it's like, yeah, this is
For
like,
you, yeah.
yeah, it's like a Ferrari and like a Pinto. It's like, man, you know, this is maybe not, I'm not the guy for you to do this for. So I left that company, and then when I got with Philip Anselmo in 2010, and in 2013 we started recording heavily. I had now found an Engel Invader, and I found the 3rd channel in that one. Really, you know, and I'm looking again at sounds and tones that are like, I'm not gonna need anything with, you know. This is supposed to do the rest of the work, the hands. So I put the Ubershaw and I put the Bogner on one end, on the speaker left, I think, hard left, and I put the Engel on hard right. And then 2013 is when I met Mike Fortin, and he introduced me to the Thrasher. I started endorsing Randalls. I have like 6 Thrashers, 150 watt, and I like the fact that you could change tubes in them. I was an EL34 guy, so I really like that amp, and I think it's a unique amp, and there's a crystal clarity to it that I really liked. And then after that, Mike created his Cali. I have that head, and then I met Kyle from KSR. I'm like going down fast slope now, talking about tone searching.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met him, you know, now he's got a pedal. You know, he's got this pedal, and he's like, you know, somebody even took me down there, and he's like, you know, I met this guy. He's like super nice guy. And I play this, and I'm like, no way, man. He's like, yeah. And it's like, this is just his pedal. And so I got really interested because this all kind of goes back to the fact that I had a trip and I had to go to Moscow. It was one of those cliche stories where, you know, you get off the plane, you get in the van, you go through all this traffic, you barely make it. You know, you barely make it. They open the van door, they go run, man, and you like you're sprinting up to go, and I literally I had a backpack still on me, and like I didn't have time, and I had to put a guitar in the backpack, and I'm like going, and it was the worst guitar sound in my life, and the band is tight. The band has been tight. I've been practicing. You want to give your audience
the best,
what
and you
what they
suck.
yeah, and you're it's you know if you're an athlete, it's like going to play basketball with one arm back, playing football with like one leg tied or something like that.
Yeah.
I asked for another amp. There was no time. They brought another amp. It sounded worse. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I couldn't even get close. So I turned the Tube Screamer all the way up, man. I did this, and I went and stood away, almost away from the amp and away from the monitors. And I just thought, man, just go through the motion of you knowing these songs and do the best that you can.
Yeah.
After that, I promised myself that that would never, ever happen to me again. Well, it well did. And when I joined Exhorder, it was a band that was, at the time, two guitar players, you know, Vinny Labello, incredible guitar player and songwriter. He had a particular tone that, you know, he wanted me to capture also. So he was like, I got it, you know, all this stuff. So Kempers came in, and by God, man, we went and did a tour with these Kempers, and they weren't mine. I had very little time to mess with them, and it really didn't do anything for me. I'm not talking negativity by these companies whatsoever. This is just my personal experience, and again, I didn't have proper time to mess with it. My experience is bringing me along. So I did a tour with it, being completely miserable and unhappy, because I knew my guitars didn't sound like that or whatever. Whatnot. So Exhorder became a four-piece band. And then we had been asked to go play Psycho Las Vegas in Vegas and to play their first album in its entirety. So we went to rehearse for it, and when we went to rehearse for it, they were in Ohio. So I had finally went and met up with Kyle and whatnot. And I got one of his KSR pedals, and he had a power amp he lent me. So I brought that, and I had an A-B box. So that was like A. B, and I was running all my pedals through it. B was this pedal that I had seen, and I was like, my jaw dropped. I love Ola, and I love all his demos. They're just like, you know, they're so good. I have a friend in Texas. His name is Jason Frankhausen. His demos, like
Killer.
they do something else for me. Maybe it's because maybe I'm a heavy player too. His tones that he gets are like it, man. It's like, you know, his playing, his tone is like Jason is just so much. So I see this guy do a demo on the AMP1 Iridium. I go right down the rabbit hole. I saw Ola's, and I saw another big, I forget his name. He's got really long hair, and he has glasses, and he's a friend of yours, and he's got a big YouTube channel. He mentioned it. He mentioned it, and his breakdown on it was, I forget his name. It's, God forbid, man, I'm so bad at it. Thorough, man. Just the most thorough, like, beautiful explanation of you and the first amps, and I think he was one of the ones that suggested maybe higher gain. I forget his name. He's got really super long hair, big, and a YouTube guy who has got glasses. He does gear stuff, and
Yeah, later. Yeah.
yeah, but and that his explanation of it just so thorough, man. And then listening to what Jason did, I was like, there's no way. There's no way. Fast forward, I contact you, I get the BluGuitar. So I go I go to get my guitar tech to put this AB thing together. Now I don't have the KSR yet, the power section and all the stuff. So well, at least putting the AB together, we plug in the BluGuitar for the first time, and when I really heard it, he looked at me and I looked at him, and you know I have an EQ pedal. By the way, the Tube Screamer ended up being a 6-band EQ for me. That became like, I figured like I could color with the 6-band EQ, I can get my tone.
The same thing.
You know, kind of like I can get enough saturation and then push it to make it like my own kind of like whatever. He looked at me and I looked at him, and he's like, we both almost at the same time and said, we don't need anything, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't need anything. Again, I'm not talking bad about anybody. I'm only talking good about stuff. So obviously I wouldn't have talked to Kyle if he wouldn't have brought my attention to it. I didn't want Russia to, the Moscow experience, to ever happen again.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to be where I am today. And I never would have thought I'd be where I am today, where you can't see the setup, but we have a mic on it, we have a camera on it, and I think I might have moved it actually.
You know what? You know, I mean, the thing about the AMP1 Iridium for me was I tried to get the sounds in your direction, in your style, that you don't need anything extra. You can still have pedals with it as you want. But maybe, yeah, let's have a look at the pedalboard. And the guys that you were recommended, or you saw the AMP1 Iridium from, I mean, Jason Funkhauser and Glenn Fricker was the guy
Correct.
that we were missing. Yeah, who you could see explaining the amp. What are you doing with this now?
Okay, so what I do with it, I have to tell you this. I do have to tell you this. Before I get really involved with it, I have to tell you accidentally what happened with your amp. I went to use your amp as an AB at this concert with Exhorder at Psycho Las Vegas at the House of Blues. It's online, so you can go look at it. Intro music comes on, and then we start to play. You see me go like, what the, you know, because when I look back, there's literally smoke. So a tech had, excuse me, had put the wrong ohmage on the KSR or something that happened. Like, so these cabinets that were behind me, my pedal board, my wah-wah, my delay, everything that was connected to it, bye. First song. So I got the AMP1 with nothing, no EQ, nothing, just going straight into it, coming out of my bass player's side. Mm-hmm. Luckily, the sound guy caught on and threw me in the monitors, mm-hmm. right? So involuntarily, for the first time in my life, I played one of the toughest gigs in my life, which was to play Slaughter in the Vatican in its entirety, from the first song to the last song, with all the intros and outro musics and stuff like that, with nothing but this guy. When I got off stage, Pepper Keenan from Down in Corrosion of Conformity said, I looked around to see if there was a second guitar player. You sounded like two guys. and then what's his face from Sleep? Matt Pike said almost the same thing. He said it sounded like two guys up there and stuff. I just remembered in a moment on stage where I've been rehearsing for like 2 weeks, you know, for this one thing, and like all of a sudden game changes on stage. I had the best experience, man. I felt like a lion. I couldn't begin to tell you, because I had the most perfect tone in my hand, and I could hear through the PA. There was no feedback unless I wanted it. Mm-hmm. There was the most perfect balance. My leads were perfect. My rhythms were perfect. Like, it just was like, it was like probably one of my best performances. And it was completely raw. There was no delays, there was nothing. And it was accidental. So, and then, so the following tours come, and then I go on the road, and then, you know, I literally actually, the only thing that now up front in these tours was an expression pedal and a wall pedal. The expression pedal was for the delay. The delay is always on, except when it's back, it's just
Blended
off.
in, yeah.
And then there's a wall. So what that meant was that the AMP1 was constantly on backstage. I mean, by the amp, it stayed on, and it didn't mess with anything else, and I didn't need anything else. Today, I brought my little pedal board, and I got a camera on it. Yeah, it's pretty good. You can see it. So, I get a variety of tones, but it's just gain, and that I've never been able to achieve. That just never, it's always like add this to, add that to it. It just always needs something. Even in my Cali head, which I love so much, I still have to use my 6-band EQ to get that, whatever it is that I need to get out of. I have a hard time using my EQ pedal with AMP1. I have a hard time doing anything to it because it just doesn't need anything. It doesn't need anything. So I went on tour with Exhorder the entire time, and every single night, every opening band guitar player, every single guitar player that was at the show was like, "What are you using?" And the ones that were within the vicinity, or like other musicians, that were backstage with me, I would take them back there and just point my finger. And I would just point my finger. And, it's always cool because people don't know what's going on. And I'm like, that's 100 watt, that's 100. And that's kind of what Glenn was doing too. I kind of was like almost boasting the same way. It was like, look at this. This thing is, this much power. All you do, and you go in and you plug it into a cabinet, and I had to have that personal experience. And then it's like, okay, there's got to be something wrong with it. Like what? The clean channel must sound like crap. And then I put on the clean channel, and it's like, you can't hear it there, but I get a stratty tone out of the Priestess. And then I like delays, Swells. And I was like, this thing's getting an effects loop. So the story gets better and better and better. Now I start incorporating my effects into it. And now I get like clean as a whistle. And so, now mind you, now I'm sitting in a room with a 412, which is great. And then I start playing live. And when I start playing live, it's got to record DI out. So for the first time, again, this is another first time for me, I tell my sound guy, hey man, I got a DI out, Every one of them, most of them unfamiliar with a guitar player having a DI out, say, man, it sounds just like that mic I got up there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go hard left and hard right with you. And that's what I do. I always use a mic on the cabinet, and I always use the DI on this thing. And it's like I'm finally able to have that sound, and I'm heard. And it's the first time where I've not had to color anything, and I have not had to like do anything. And I've had to do something always. This is the first time I've not had to do anything. I just came back from a trip to Hawaii. I put this guitar in a gig bag, and I had a backpack with the BluGuitar and a Eventide H9.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. I went to the gig. They had a guitar cabinet there. I didn't even take it. Was, so yeah, it's like I haven't actually been playing so much. Yeah, I did want to, like, you heard the clean guitar sound. It's just like, and then with a little bit exaggerated delay and stuff. It's incredible. Now, that's a lot of reverb, there's a trail behind it. Because as the viewers are watching this, one thing you will not understand now is that I actually changed the channel. You didn't hear it click. There's a mic on this thing. And now you get... So it just goes, and I stop playing, and it's like dead. And so the response to it, the confidence that goes with the playing, you know, it's just like, and you know, it's in your hands, it's in your hands. And I've always like had to use like a micro amp or an EQ pedal or something to do the leads with. Now I just really don't need it. I don't need it, and it just feels so good to have it all in my hand. And so yeah, I get you know, over here with my pedal board, you know, I have the I call it the Van Halen pedal. And I have my other Van Halen pedal, which is the Phase 90. With a little bit of delay. And then we can even add a little reverb on it. We get that Van Halen. You know, and it's like a studio friggin' tone, man. And like all of it goes DI. I can go direct in, and I've been using like Easy Drummer for my programs, and it's like, so yeah, I got to tell you, I got a Focusrite at home, and I've used the AMP1 going in, and I don't have a power preamp. I don't have like a nice preamp. I don't. I've just been going through the Focusrite. My demos sound stupid, man. They sound so good. It sounds so good. It's like the saturation that I wanted, even a little bit more, but the clarity is there. There's so much clarity, and the guitar is not playing bass. It's not doing something it's not supposed to do. It's like literally everything I loved about an amp, which is like, you know, what like Mike's done, which like people take things that work, like high watts and Marshalls and Oranges, and they soup them up. Well, this is that souped up version. I've never, you know, it's like I almost felt bad because I felt like I had to do something to make it personal. And the only thing that I really have to do with AMP1 to make it personal is to play guitar the way I play guitar.
See, and that's the point. For me, this is the ideal thing, that it is in the end the player. The gear should make you feel home, and when you feel home, you can be yourself and you shine with whatever you do. And this is, you know, when we go back to the Van Halen thing, Van Halen created his own tone to be in his comfort zone.
Correct.
To come up with his style, to get the harmonics out, to have the tightness, to get the riffs across, you know, in a certain, I mean, it has a punch, but it has a little dirt, and it has a clarity, and everything is in a balance that he can create a tone with for his sound. And I'm happy for anybody that found his own amp. You know, it does not have to be one of my amps. I'm happy for somebody that has a whatever old PV and whatever plugs in, is happy, because a musician needs an instrument that makes him feel good and play better. So
yeah,
and I'm just offering, you know, my experience and my tone journey stuff into my, I hope, practical things. So with your story, going to Russia, playing, you know, experience, and not being down, you know, so this kind of thing you can put in your gig bag, plug it in, and you're safe, you know.
It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. I you know, I don't know. I always brag about it. I said, you know, I get on the plane and I get off the plane with my tools. I don't have to go search for it, because, you know, since we're talking real quick, that green Tube Screamer of mine, my very first European tour, it was on my pedal board. Why do I always kick this camera around?
it was on my pedal board, and our first gig was in Switzerland. It went to France. next gig was in France. It went to Switzerland. So I got it back at Download Festival in England. And soon as this guy, I was like just sitting by myself, and this guy goes, "We got you both, sir." And I looked and I was like, "No way, man!" I went in there, and here's like another positive side to it is that Gary Holt of Slayer Exodus, he was playing in Slayer at the time. He had heard the story. So while Slayer was playing and I was on the side of the stage, when he walked off because they were about to do encore, he walked off, literally walked right up to me and he goes, "Hey, do you still need an overdrive pedal?" And he
Oh,
got
nice.
Warren, his tech,
Yeah.
to give me a green, way huge green pedal, and I used that. I used that pedal, and then when I got my pedal board back, I took my Tube Screamer, I put it in my backpack, I put it on the bus, I brought it back to home to America, and I was like, "You are retired."
Yeah.
I got with Max on, and then they hooked me up and stuff like that. But I was like, "You're retired. You're not going to go anywhere now." So again, I always felt as though I felt guilty for not like being able to like I got to do something, and I really didn't do anything. And it's almost one of those like spinal tap moments. You can't see this, but I'm gonna go. My clean. I have the fact that you have these little knobs on the side that you
Yeah.
can add just that much more is amazing. The fact that you have your own built-in gate is also amazing. I'm sitting right next to this amp. I'm sitting behind a 412, and I'm not using any other device. I used the exaggerated reverb so we can see what how
Yeah.
clean it actually
Yeah.
sounds.
Yeah.
So I have that around 7. My gain on my overdrive pedal, I love the vintage because I just like you killed it, and I love the classic because those are the amps that I love. So in the studio, if somebody asked me to go for a different type, I got 4 colors to choose from.
Yeah.
This is way more than what I can even fathom, and I'm using the red channel. I got the gain all the way up, and I got the master all the way up because my guitar cabinets carry a enormous amount of bottom end. I've only got the bass around 2 o'clock, and I got the mids about 2.5, and I got the treble about 7.5. I don't use the reverb, and if I need anything for leads, boost, baby.
That's
That
all you
boost,
need. Yeah.
it does magic. It's incredible. It's the same tone, and it's just like there you go. And then you can you can control your boost also on the side.
Side.
That
Yeah.
again is another bunch of magic points to me. So you get. I had the phase on. Okay, you kill everything, and this is. Right now, it sounds so good. I know that I'm gonna send you audio and video of this
Yeah. Yeah.
good stuff. Like while we're doing this on the computer, you really can't hear it. But man, I never would have thought in my life that I'd be sitting this close to a 412 cabinet and having that sound. Usually I'll shy away from it, I go somewhere else and get the monitors and EQ this and that. But no, finally, hey, look, man, I don't even know how to thank you.
No.
It's been you make it so easy to talk to you that I have to like this whole entire time I should be thanking you
No, no, no,
because
man.
my personal
I'm just happy that you are happy. That's all my goal. I'm on this
I'm
planet.
beyond happy. I'm beyond happy. My personal journey of tone searching, tone chasing has been a long one. Not that I'm anything different than anybody else, but obviously I'm like, I'm just, all I'm saying is like, I heard things in my head
Sure.
that I wasn't, you know, and I'm thank God that you took the time with your know-how, with your brain and your engineering, and you're an amazing guitar player. Once
We all do our things, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just so amazing that you're such a player, and that makes it even more, you know, it's just not like it came from like one end of it, you know, like, you know, you came in from both ends, and then man, it's just amazing. I thank you so much for this pedal, man. It's brought so much confidence in for me, and I love it so damn much, and I can go anywhere with it. And like I it's just, you know, the fun part, tell everybody in the world gets to get one and know what it's all about, is the fact that when people ask me what's going on, I'm like, I got a 100-watt head that I use. And they're like, where is it? I'm like, you're looking at it.
No, is it?
And then you have to say it again. You said, listen, kind of like Glenn did in his interview. He was like, this is a 100-watt head.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we have to make the competition. How many times can you lift a 100-watt amp like this one or an old tube head? You know, it's like, okay, who's the winner, and how far you can throw this one? You know, so this is.
And then, hey, you know, you know, the convenience of it, its portable size and all that stuff. Like, I don't want that to have anything to do with what I'm actually saying. What I'm saying is I love that Marshall behind you. I'm saying I love tone.
Sure.
Yes, this thing is small. How about, but if it didn't have the tone, I wouldn't
Nobody
even mess
needs
with
it.
it, man.
No,
It'd be like,
so,
oh yeah, it's cute. But it's got the tone. It's got the tone. The fact that it's got the tone and it's in the size, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. And so many other plus sides to it. For instance, for me, it's the using the DI out now, you know, and even all of a sudden, if like the monitor guy has a brain fart and it sounds like dog crap on stage, I know, man, that my guitar sounds great up front. I know because I get told that. I was told that the entire time. Well, we were with
on
Exhorder.
tour, yeah.
This is from kids coming up to me and going, man, the guitar sounded great. What we used, the guitar sounded great. I've never had that many compliments on a tour from my tone previously. So this was the first time that I like got people to actually come out. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I did have the DI out, and then there was like, you were gonna hear me, man. You're gonna hear me. And then you heard that rich tone, with distortion, rich tone, no clinkety clank. It's very balanced. Yeah, I can keep going on, man. But the
No,
rest of it actually, I think, would be like, you know, it's kind of like, um, it's like you can tell me like this thing tastes good or whatever, and I believe you. Like, there's a difference between believing and knowing. Jason Frankhausen is like is a key dude. So Ola is too. So when they were doing this demos, I believed them. And my ear was really definitely was believing them. But man, it wasn't until I got one in person,
and
plugged it
that,
up. Now I know there's a difference
yeah,
between knowing and believing.
of
And
course.
once you, oh man, it's so awesome. And I
But
look
hey,
forward to everything else that you got coming up. I follow you and I see the new amps that you got coming up, and it's just so
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I look forward to it, man. It's like, you know.
Yeah, for me, it's just good to hear that the stuff that I'm doing is actually doing what I wanted the stuff to do. You know, I put this company in place because I didn't want to compromise. I didn't want to have anybody stopping me until I get to the point where I feel exactly, where I know it's doing what I know from these amps. This is what my story is all about. If you like a different tone that I don't offer, fair enough. I'm happy for everybody who has its own recipe and style, but for me, it's good to know that people like you out there play the gear and enjoy it as it should be. Hey, Marzi, I have to thank you so much for our interview here. We have to talk more next time, because I know there's a story about Ola. There is a story, you know, we save this for later, because there's more we should talk about. maybe I have the chance to see you on a NAMM probably in 24 or so. We have to meet in person somewhere. Maybe I come to Texas and visit you.
Oh yeah, man, I got you.
Yeah.
It's
So
thank you so much for having me. And again, man, thank you for creating this pedal, man. It's been a life changer for me.
well, it's a pleasure to do stuff for guys like you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.